Hello and welcome, I'm Izzy at Minerva. Today we're looking at how to hack our Emma top sewing pattern, which is our Minerva Exclusive sewing pattern. You can see what it looks like in the image next to me here. We're going to alter that pattern and I'm going to hack it using pattern drafting methods to create this image as you can see here. What we're going to do is we're going to lengthen it to create a midi length dress. We're going to add a slit up the side. We're then going to add nice little waist ties at the waist so that we can give the garment a bit of definition. It's not going to be a belt, it's going to be created through creating two panels, one panel on either side of the shoulders all the way down. So it's a really lovely simple alteration, but it's going to have a really gorgeous little effect. As you follow along today, you're going to need your standard pattern drafting tools like rulers and pencils and pens. You're also going to need the original Emma top sewing pattern, so do grab yourself a copy from our website and cut out the size that you need before we start the hack together. If you need any further support with what size to cut or what type of fabric we'd recommend, or even how to sew the original steps in the pattern booklet, we have 3 videos on our Minerva website which address those 3 key topics. So do take a look at those if you need any extra support. So in today's video, I will be showing you how to alter the pattern and draft it, and then I'm going to show you how to sew up the steps that deviate from the original sewing instructions. Let's get straight on into the pattern drafting side of things. So we're going to work on our back bodice pattern piece to start off with, and the very first thing we want to do is we're basically just going to lengthen the entire thing. This pattern piece is going to get so big it's going to go off the screen. But what we need to do is, so grab your back pattern piece and then we're going to add a whole load of paper onto the bottom down here. Okay, great, so here's the back bodice and I'm going to add some paper down here. Excellent, so make sure you've got a nice straight line going down the centre back down here with your piece of paper, and that line will just extend down the centre back. The next thing we want to know is how long do you want your midi dress to be? So grab a tape measure and measure from either your waist down or your hip down to the length that you want your dress to be. For me, I've already given it a quick measure and I want my hem to be 65 centimetres lower than my hip line, and then I'm going to add 1.5 centimetres to that length to give me my final hemline, and that will just be my seam allowance, which I'm going to turn up at the bottom. So I'm going to extend from my hip notch, which is this one right here, it's the lowest notch on the side seam, and I'm literally just going to extend that down by 66.5 centimetres. Okay, next measure the length of your new line from the bottom of the hem and then start to dash it out. What I want to create here is I want to create a bit of a, like a sort of soft curve in to that shape, just to like soften it and do a bit of a design aesthetic. So I'm just going to grab my ruler here and just use this gentle curve on this side just to sort of dash that in to create a nice bit of softness at that point where it starts to tie in. And then just draw a nice line all the way across to your centre back. Okay guys, so make a note of the distance that you offset the hem by from the hem. So for me it was 52.5. I'm just going to write that down. So I've extended it 52.5 centimetres. Brilliant, that's step 1 done. We can now cut that out. The next thing we want to do is to decide where you want the slits to come up to. Just to keep things really simple, I'm going to say it will be at the bottom of the original hem here. So just annotate that there and just put top of slit. And that's the top of the side seam slit. Okay, so we've lengthened it, amazing. Now what we want to do is to create a panel going all the way from the shoulder all the way down to the very bottom. And that's so that we can incorporate our tie into it. Very simply, measure the length of your shoulder and find the midpoint. Next, find the midpoint from the back notch to the centre back. Next, measure at the notch location here and find the midpoint again. Measure at your hip notch and find the midpoint again. And down at the top of the slit down here, find the midpoint. And then just at regular intervals, mark the halfway point again. Excellent, draw a line. Up here, we just want to find a nice soft curve up at the top, and then just sort of join those lines up together. At the waist point here, just square across until you hit that line and annotate that to say tie location. Write that on both sides of that pattern piece, and then split the pattern in two, cutting along that line. Now, while these two pattern pieces are still together, just mark a little notch on both sides at the bottom of that hem, and that will give you a really nice little reference, and then another one across the two pattern pieces up there. And because we're working on the back, we should do a little double notch actually. Excellent, separate the two pattern pieces, add a little piece of paper in the middle, and then we'll create our side seams. And then just do a little 1.5 centimetre offset for each of these panels all the way down. And this creates your seam allowance on your pattern piece. Excellent. Now just make sure you transfer those notches to the edge of your seam allowance so that you've got a really nice little reference there. I would now annotate your pattern piece to say back, centre back, and side back panel. Wonderful. Okay, well done. That was quite a lot of drafting, wasn't it? We're basically just going to do the exact same thing for the front now. So we'll just whiz through that and demonstrate the key principles and what it's going to look like at the end. So make a little note of that. You've now done everything you need to for your back. Let's move on to the front. Okay, so here's our front bodice, pattern piece A. This is the hem of it. There's our hip notch right there. And I've just added a piece of paper here. Grab your side back panel. So we've lined it up exactly like that. Flip it over. You should be able to see the notch on the bottom through your tracing paper. And what I want us to do is just literally trace along that curve so that we've got a matching curve to start off with. Okay, once you've found and traced over that curve, just square it across to the centre front. Beautiful, just like that. Annotate the top of your side seam up here, that's the top of side seam slit. And next what we're going to do is just create that panel going all the way down the front. And then at the waist level, annotate where the tie point is going to go. So line up your ruler with that notch and then just write the word tie. Add a notch down the bottom down here. And add another one about halfway up between the bust and the top. Excellent, cut out that pattern piece, add your seam allowances, and then that's that piece done. And of course, once you've added your seam allowances, add your notches. So just like this, where the tie needs to be, down on the hem, down here, and that's it. Well done. Now let's just create our ties, which are going to be located here. We're going to need 4 because we've got one on each side front and one on each side back. Grab a straight piece of paper and working from the bottom edge of the piece of paper, draw a line that is 5 centimetres above and parallel to the edge of the sheet of paper. Now at this point you're going to want to decide how long you want your tie to be. I'm going to draft it out to be on the safe side at 40 centimetres. I think we're definitely going to be able to reduce that down once we get it into the garment and try it on. This is our side tie and we're going to cut 4, 2 for each side. And there we go. You might want something a little bit longer or wider depending on your aesthetics. My overall size of my tie is going to be 2 centimetres deep, and then we've got a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to either side. Great, we have done all of our pattern and drafting now. We are all ready to go. We're going to cut out those pattern pieces. Don't forget the neckband is also a pattern piece that you need to cut out, as is the sleeve. We've not made any alterations to those. So the fabric that I'm going to sew this pattern up with is this gorgeous Minerva Exclusive fabric. This is our Minerva Core Range Cotton Lycra Jersey in Cassis. It's got a really nice amount of stretch. It's going to be draping and tying around our body really beautifully. Can't wait to sew this up. I've started sewing and I've already sewn steps 1 all the way through to step 5. So basically we've got the back pattern piece and we've just added that nice little binding finish to the back of the neck. So all of those steps are exactly the same as the booklet. At the next point though, step 6 is talking about dealing with the front, and our front is in 2 panels. So moving on, we're going to just do a few of our own steps before we refer back to the instruction booklet. So we've got 4 of these ties here, and basically what we want to do is just sew them together to create our ties. So to start off with right sides together, fold one of the pieces lengthways and just pin in place. Next, we're just going to sew at our standard seam allowance 1.5 centimetres all the way around the long side and one of the short sides, leaving one of the short sides open. Excellent, just like that. So one short side and one long side. Next, just trim down the seam allowance in half, making sure that you just cut diagonally at the corner as close as you can to the stitches. Next, I'm going to use my prim turning tools to turn out the tie to the right side. Now you can turn out these ties in loads of different methods. This is just a nice quick way that I particularly like. So we're just going to thread the blue section all the way through, and then using the dowel we're just going to poke that through to turn it right side out. Excellent, give that a nice press so it's sitting nice and flat, and then just repeat that process for the other 3 ties. Next, take your centre back panel, the one that we cut one on the fold with, and do you remember that we did a little notch here at the waist, which is where we said our tie needed to go, so we've got 1 notch here and 1 notch over there. Take one of your ties and just pin it where that notch is. Take the other tie, and obviously we're pinning the raw edge to the raw edge, and just pin that in place. At this point now we're just going to tack it in place at 1 centimetre offset from the raw edge. So it's just holding it in place temporarily, because then obviously we're going to be sewing the side panel to the back, and we'll capture this in at that point too. Excellent. Once you've done that, I would recommend just gently tying those 2 together so that they don't get trapped in your stitches later. Next, repeat the process with the centre front panel. We've got the tie notch here and the corresponding one on this side. So lay those 2 ties over those notches and sew in place. Next, with right sides together, place your front side seam panel over your front centre pattern piece and just pin the raw edges together, matching at the notches as you go. Once you've pinned it in place, then just sew using standard seam allowance, 1.5 centimetres, and then finish it using your preferred method. And once you've done one side, just repeat the same process for the other side. Repeat this process of sewing the side back panels to the back centre piece as well. Okay, so now we've sewn the side panels to the centre front, and we've done the same on the back, and we've just overlocked those edges. Next, we're just going to continue with step 6 and 7, 8 and 9. Come back and join me as you get to step 10. Lovely. All right, so now we've got those shoulders all joined together. We've got the back attached to the front, but we haven't yet done our side seams. So before we do our side seams, I want us just to overlock or finish all of the side seams using your preferred method. So for me, I'm just going to overlock them. Now, if you remember down at the bottom, we did this lovely little curve that went into here because we've got a slit here. So what I want us to do as we overlock or finish the side seams, start at the arm side, the bottom of the arm side, overlock and finish all the way down around the curve, and then all the way down the hem and back up to the other arm side, the other side. Repeat for the back as well. Once you've overlocked all of those side seams, just fold the right sides together, the front over the back. Now, when we did our back side panel, do you remember that we did like a little single notch here, which is the top of the side seam slit? So if I flip it over like that, line it up here, you can see the top of my side seam where that notch is right here. Pop a little double pin here to remind yourself that that's where you want to stop sewing the side seam, because you want to leave that flap open at the bottom. Just pin the remaining side seams together. And then we're going to sew using just our standard seam allowance, 1.5 centimetres. And obviously we've already finished the edges, so we don't need to do any further finishing. Once you've done one side, repeat for the other side seam. Okay, excellent. Those side seams are now done, leaving a nice big slit at the bottom for a bit of extra movement. Right, now press those seams open once you've done that, and then we're just going to attach the sleeves exactly as it says in the booklet here. So step 11 and 12 will just be repeated exactly as they've got there, and then come back and join me for the hem. Excellent. Once you've got your sleeves sewn into your top, you can just hem them exactly as it says in the instructions by turning them up 1.5 centimetres and then top stitching all the way around. What we're going to do, which is different to the instructions, is how we hem the bottom of the garment. So obviously we've got this lovely little slit happening right there, and what we basically want to do is to fold and iron and press all of the side seam down by 1.5 centimetres. So just roll it up 1.5 centimetres all the way around. Give it a good press. Okay, once you have pinned or just pressed your hem under by 1.5 centimetres, we're then just going to sew all of that down, sewing at about 1.3 centimetres from the folded edge. When we get up to the top up here, we're just going to sew up to here, and then we're going to do a 90-degree turn, so we sew straight across the top of the slit and then all the way back down. Once you've done that, we're complete, and let's go and see what it looks like. So here is our beautiful midi length dress with a side slit, and we've got these gorgeous little panels coming down with the ties at the side. Now you can tie the ties towards the side as I've shown you here, and you can also tie them towards the front as well for a slightly different aesthetic. So lots of different options there, a really nice versatile design, and I hope you've really enjoyed the sewing process and the designing process. Thank you for following me today. I've been Izzy at Minerva. We have a whole load of other pattern hack videos, so do take a look on our Minerva YouTube channel, where there's loads of inspiration of how you can alter the Emma pattern.